Friends, picture this. A bustling street in the 1960s, filled with signs proclaiming, "We shall overcome." In the midst of the fervor, the steady hum of a soulful melody rises, uniting the crowd, forging connections. Pause. Oh, never mind. Forging connections and building a formidable force against racial injustice. This, my friends, is the power of music. Music has not just been the soundtrack to social movements. It has been the heart, the pulse, and the very soul of many transformative movements. From the days of the Harlem Renaissance, where the jazz age illuminated the struggles and triumphs of the Black community, to the poignant lyrics of Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind, questioning freedom, peace, and understanding, music has constantly been our mirror, reflecting societal challenges while simultaneously being the clarion call for change. Think of Billie Holiday's haunting rendition of Strange Fruit, a song that laid bare the atrocities of racial violence, or the rebellious anthems of the 1970s punk rock scene, challenging the status quo and demanding societal change. In these melodies and lyrics, artists captured the zeitgeist of their era, becoming voices for the voiceless. Studies have constantly shown that the correlation between music and sociopolitical activism is strong. Harvard University's study on music and movements highlights how anthems and songs can amplify the reach and impact of a movement. The study cited that protest songs during the civil rights movement not only created solidarity among African Americans, but also made the struggles relatable to white Americans, bridging a crucial empathetic gap. John Lennon once said, "Music is everyone's possession. It's only the publishers who think that people own it." And he couldn't have been more accurate. A report from UCLA revealed that songs with socially conscious lyrics are 60% more likely to be shared, sung, and remembered across generations compared to those without. They transcend boundaries, races, and age. Statistics from the Global Music Report indicate that even today, tracks with themes of social justice or political activism see a huge surge in streams during major social events. Look, take, for example, Childish Gambino's "This Is America." Released in 2018, it became an anthem for shedding light on gun violence and racial issues in America, accumulating over 700 million views on YouTube. It's not just a song, it's a movement in itself. Look, to say that music merely accompanies social change would be a vast understatement. Music ignites it, fuels it, and propels it. It's a universal language that does not discriminate, echoing the cries of those fighting for justice and amplifying their voices in harmonies and rhythms that the world cannot ignore. For as long as there are battles to be fought and stories to be told, music will remain at the forefront, leading the charge towards a more just, equitable, and harmonious world. My guest today epitomizes this concept. Paul Hayward is the founder of the Cides, a group whose mission is to raise awareness about the social and environmental injustices that we suffer at the hands of a small group of people to whom we have gradually surrendered our power. They advocate communities where everyone is valued and has the power to decide on the structures, laws, and values to adopt, not have edicts forced upon us by some monarchy, oligarchy, or hierarchical structure of government that does not act in our interest. The Cides is not just a fixed lineup. Amazing musicians contribute from around the world, with their core family drawn from the UK and France. One thing they all have in common is anger against the corrupt, unelected individuals who sit at the top of a power pyramid that we have allowed to be created. Their singles and videos aims to fight for and support the current generation to reclaim their rights. The Cides are supporters of anarchic structures from roots up, such as communities and workers' organizations, and so forth, as opposed to archaic structures like monarchy and oligarchy, which consist of top-down governance from the few. And I am so delighted to introduce Paul Hayward to my wonderful audience. Paul was on another show that I do called Profiles in Music, and we had just an extraordinary conversation. And today we're going to do something a little different on the show. We're not going to have any specific topics. we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to touch on anti-Semitism and how that's used inappropriately to quell criticisms of of Israel and the conflict of Palestine. And we're just going to have an extraordinary conversation. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I'm going to enjoy having it. We'll be right back. And welcome back. My guest today, again, is Paul Hayward from the Cides. And we're going to have a lot of fun today. And we're going to have a little bit of music. We're going to have 3 songs. One that we'll be hearing here for the very first time. And with great, great pleasure, I want to welcome someone who I consider to be a great friend and a great inspiration and someone whose music I absolutely love. And with that, my friends, let's bring in Paul Hayward. Paul.
Hey, Sean.
How are you? Hey, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much, Sean, my brother. Thank you for having me back. The message of your radio station, it just so resonates with the message of our band, the Cides. It feels like we're,
yes,
it's a pleasure to be back here.
Yes, it's great to have you. And, as I said to my audience, I had you on another show, Profiles in Music, but that conversation was so stimulating that I felt I needed to bring you to a broader audience and introduce you to my viewers and listeners on this show, because what you're doing, what you've done with your music is the epitome of social change. Everything that you it's just passionate, a passion for social justice that resonates with your lyrics. And you're not afraid to speak out against controversial topics. You and I are in perfect sync on these issues.
Yeah, we are. And I think what's great is, because we've got no set topics this evening, for me, that's just indicative of how we resonate together. And hey, we can talk about anything. What's going on in America, with race riots, what's going on with Robert Kennedy, what's going on in Israel, what's going on with the World Economic Forum and cryptocurrencies, and what's going on with gold. Hey, we've got a picnic basket of topics we could just dive into, and because we are people who speak with integrity from the heart, it doesn't matter. I'm not rehearsed. I'm sure you're not rehearsed, but any topics that we feel that your listeners might be a little bit concerned about or connecting with now, or hey, bring it on. We've got a beautifully healthy forum where hopefully it's going to stimulate people and it's going to answer a lot of people's questions.
Yeah, I wanted to first start with you and your history in music, because I found that so fascinating from our conversation before. You actually first co-founded a band called the Molesters, and then you went on to found the Cides. And I wonder if you could just kind of talk about how you got into music and the evolution that you sort of went through going from the Molesters into the Cides, and what you hope to accomplish with your music.
Yeah, well, I first got into music probably at the age of 12 or 13. My dad was a semi-professional singer, and I tried to sing, but he was very critical of me. You're singing sharp, you're singing flat, you're singing out of time. And so I thought, to hell with this. So I went and got a guitar. And he can't play a guitar, so he can't criticize me. So that's my link with the guitar. And I just love playing the guitar. For me, it was a creative outlet, and very important for me to have. I had a challenging parenthood as a child. Like probably many of us, our parents had some issues, dysfunction. And, back in those days, it wasn't cool to talk about any psychological trauma. So, for example, my dad lost his parents at the age of 11. They both died of polio. My mum doesn't know who her father was. She was orphaned out in the war. And obviously, my mum and dad both had some deep hurt problems, but it was all, shuttered down, and they armor them up, and they knew never talk about it, Anyway, so for my dad, for his singing, he needed to feel that was his tower of power, and that nobody else can compete with him. And he actually sang. When my dad sang, he would sound just like Frank Sinatra. And there are some old BBC recordings of my dad out there. And literally, you couldn't tell if it was Frank Sinatra singing or my dad. It was amazing. But anyway, I chose the guitar. And then, when I left home and I took my guitar with me, and I left home at 16, 17. I got sponsored because I was quite bright with computers by British Telecom, your equivalent probably of AT&T. And they sponsored me to go and do a degree in computer science down in Brighton. And I was, really pleased to do that. I love playing around with the gadgets, but I always had my guitar with me. And then when I got down to Brighton, in those days, students were given a university grant to pay for your rent and your food for the 3 years that you did your university, your graduation course. But there was a problem that I had, and a lot of my friends also had, where the grant and the money hadn't come through. So we had a choice of giving up our degree studies, or we went squatting. So we ended up basically in a 30-bedroom hotel in Brighton in a squat, which was where students were who hadn't got any money. And we were doing bar jobs and working burger bars in the evenings and living in the squat, and then continuing with our education during the day. And that was great. I mean, initially it was all students, but then after 6 months, we just invited in homeless people off the beach, and it was wild, but it was great. And then through this, being in this squat, there was a banqueting hall in the squat. Can you imagine this Edwardian hotel on Brighton seafront that had been shut for 20 years? It was actually owned by members of the Freemasons, we found out. Oh. But anyway, we had this banqueting hall in there, and we started rehearsing in there. And then we lived as a punk band in this hotel in Brighton, rehearsing. We were just the band. And we all gave up our I gave up my computer science degree towards the end. The drummer gave up his law degree in the end because we were just into playing our music. And it was at the time when Nelson Mandela was being considered for release from prison, and Steve Biko, I don't know if you're aware of Steve Biko, who was a young ANC activist. He'd also been imprisoned at the time. And so we started writing songs, political songs, and we wrote a song about Steve Biko. There's a film called Biko. If you want to watch something that really moves the heart about the ANC and Mandela's movement, watch Biko. Wow, amazing, true story. And then we got in. Then the firemen went on strike in Brighton because they hadn't had a pay rise for 10 years. So we did gigs to support them. Then there were lots of homeless people, and we can understand why are all these hotels empty and all these people are homeless on the streets. That's absolutely crazy. So we started raising money for homeless people, and that was it. We were really focused on the punk movement, and as I might have shared with you before, in the UK, CBGBs, the people like the Ramones, New York Dolls, Iggy Pop, they came with this new raw energy that gave the music industry at the time a long needed enema. And that energy came across to the UK, and then bands like The Clash, the Chumbawamba and the Sex Pistols, they actually put some political meat into the musical energy that cut. And that's, you know, where I got my inspiration from, particularly The Clash. So yeah, and then I got married, had 3 beautiful children who I loved dearly. I didn't play for a long time. And then my youngest son, Jack, he has a real talent for drums. And he said to me 3 or 4 years ago, he said, "Dad, the issues that we young people are facing now, there are mountains rather than the hills that you were facing. So why don't you start playing again and singing about the issues of today?" So I'm very grateful for Jack, my youngest son, you know, and some of the young guys in Bristol who he was playing with. And that was the catalyst for the launch of the Cides, because a lot of young people who claim to be playing punk today, it's not the same roots punk that I was playing and the Clash were playing back in the day. But these young people, so, you know, Jack is around 25, 26. But he said, you know, "Dad, we've got the same anger and concern about these environmental and social issues. So, Dad, why don't you fire up and, you know, take off where the Molesters left off?" And so that's how the Cides came about. And initially it was with young punk musicians from Bristol, all around the same age as my son Jack, but had real energy and talent for playing, you know. And as I mentioned on the website, a lot of people say, "Well, you know, what you're playing isn't punk." And so I said, "Well, what's your definition of punk?"
Punk, yeah.
And my definition of punk is it's creativity, art, musical expression that is highlighting social and environmental injustice, and it does it with passion and with anger, and that's where the fire comes from. And you know, and today, as Jack said, "Dad, the issues that us people have got today are mountains compared with the hills that you had." And he's got some truth in that. And so that's why the Cides was born, and that's why you know, we're writing about contemporary issues, things that are going on now, and you know, I love it. And we're an open family. We've got people, as you said in the intro, we've got backing vocalists in Boston. We've got a backing vocalist comes from Portugal, guitarist from London, guitarist from France. And we welcome musicians if they feel in the heart our messages and they've got some talent. Come, but you know, it's like a lot of people just come and say, "I want to play for the Cides," and I say, "Well, that's fantastic, but do you resonate with our message? Do you really feel our messages? Because that's what we're about." So for me, I was a backing vocalist in the Molesters, and I was terrible. I was terrible. And when I started the Cides, I said to Jack and the guys, I said, "Hey, I don't want to be a lead vocalist. I'm primarily a songwriter. And if someone can sing my words and express them more fully than me, hey, bring them on." Because the Cides is much more about the delivery of awakening messages than it is about me being a lead vocalist. So anybody out there who can sing, and we've got some possibilities going on with some ex-Clash members and some Chumbawamba members and some other punk bands in Berlin who might sing as well. But if anybody's out there and they feel they want to sing the messages of the Cides, come on in.
Yeah, don't look at me because I can't sing for the to save my life. Literally, you don't
Yeah,
want to hear me sing. But Paul,
yeah.
people are going to ask, why the anger? Everything is going so perfectly in the world.
No, unfortunately, the world is not going perfectly, and you know, it's like some. Have you heard of Extinction Rebellion in the United
Yes,
States?
I
Yeah,
love them.
yeah. So they've got a great side to them. Unfortunately, there's a dark shadow side to the heads of
Yeah,
Extinction.
isn't that always the case though? The top structures.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I know because I did some sound engineering for them at a big manifestation, a demonstration in London 3 years ago. I was the sound engineer for one of the key sound engineers for Extinction Rebellion. And when we started off as 5 or 6 groups in various parts of London, blockading various parts of London, incredibly effective as activists. And then we all got kettled into this area in Trafalgar Square. And when I got into Trafalgar Square, there was this huge marquee with solar panels, batteries, inverters. And I'm looking at probably $200,000 worth of equipment. I'm thinking, well, where did the money come from this? You know, because we as a
Yeah.
Bristol group, we were walking around with a converted wheelbarrow as a PA system and microphone. You know? Where did the money come from this? And anyway, but you know, anger is a natural response. Anger's not, you know, anger is something that's in all of us. It's how we channel it and manifest it that's very important. And you know, some people unfortunately manifest that in a physical way and a violent way. But you know, for me, the anger means actually saying no, enough, and stop. And the anger, you know, gives way to, for me, expression.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the song that you're going to maybe play later on called "Wake Up America." It's so important. This song is originally called "Wake Up England," and we cut a version for you guys this evening, just for you guys. Nobody else has heard it in the world. But you remember in the 1700s, we had food revolts in England and peasant uprisings. People were saying, you know, because of the monarchy, mono as in one, archy, deciding it was King John. And people were starving and they rose up and they basically said to King John, we're going to die because of your policies and the way you control us and deprive us of the ability to grow food and hunt. So we're going to do battle with you. And we don't care. So they turned up with pitchforks and stones. And King John signed the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta was a huge document about the basic rights of people to exist freely and peacefully on the land. And the Magna Carta went on to become the basis of the American Charter of Independence. So your document. And, you know, and there's a great history between England and America.
Yes.
You know, England was a huge colonial power. You know, the saying was that the sun never set on the English Empire. But the independence, the American Constitution, enshrines lots of the basic principles of the Magna Carta. And for me, Runnymede, where the people basically rose up as an army and threatened the king, and then the American War of Independence against the English and the French, the English people and the American people fighting the War of Independence were basically standing up for independence and the right to self-determination, the right for anarchy. So, you know, as I say, anarchy does not mean violence, disrespect of people, disrespect of values. It's completely the opposite. It's saying, hey, we as a community have the right to decide how we function, what our values are. what we do, and our infrastructure, not to be told by somebody up there whose primary cause is making money and power to tell what to do, you know?
Yep.
So, you know, so that's why I see anger is in all of us, and properly channeled is a very healthy emotion.
No, absolutely. I mean, it can also be an unhealthy emotion, like for me, because I get angry and anxious and depressed and especially politically, because it does not seem as though the solutions to any of these problems are going to come from the politicians.
No, I mean, unfortunately, all the politicians that we see today, they belong to the same club.
Yes.
So, you know, whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, you know, in England, whether it's Rashid, Sunak, the current prime minister, or whether it's the Labour Party guy, can't remember his name at the moment, but these people have all been to what's called the World Economic Forum's grooming of world leaders. So I don't know if your viewers, listeners are aware of the World Economic Forum, what it stands for. But these are the people who are unelected, who are driving the agenda for the capital world at the moment, the capitalist world. And people like Trudeau, the leader of Canada, people like Sarkozy, people like Macron, people like Rishi Sunak, people like the younger Bidens, have all been through this program of the world elite, grooming leaders. Which Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, is from the same school. So it doesn't matter, you know, we get this puppet, this, you know, makeshift, this smoke and mirrors. Okay, oh, we can choose a Democrat or a Republican. We can choose a Labour or a Conservative. But hey, they're the two sides of the same coin. There's a great expression. It doesn't matter who you vote for. Deep state government always gets in.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I was a member of the Labour Party in the UK for quite a long time. And there was a really charismatic and guy of integrity called Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
Who was leading the party. And he said, no nonsense politics. And he must have, I don't know if you know the expression, when they talk about Parliament. Have you heard of Guy Fawkes?
Yes, Guy Fawkes, yes.
Guy Fawkes. So he basically, 200 years ago, he dug a tunnel under the Parliament building in London and packed it with explosive because he said the Parliament is so corrupt and he just wanted to blow it all up. And so it said that Guy Fawkes was the only person who entered into Parliament with honest intentions. Anyway, but Jeremy Corbyn, he was so refreshing. But what happened with Jeremy Corbyn? He got the anti-Semitic smear, which, you know, we can go into and talk about more if you want.
Well, and that was completely debunked. I mean, everything that they accused him of has been debunked. I mean, it's they did, and you know what? They did the same thing to Bernie Sanders over here. These same claims. Yeah. It's almost like they have a playbook to get people who represent the people out of power.
Yeah. Well, this is it. When if I refer to them to the cabal.
Yeah.
But these guys, when they are faced with somebody in the public eye who's coming from a place of real truth and integrity, they don't want to engage with them because they're going to, the clothes are going to come off, the kimono is going to open. And they don't know what to do because they can't give an answer of truth and integrity. So they go on the attack and they'll dig up, oh yeah, did you know that when that guy was 18 years old, he was smoking marijuana? Did you know that that guy, when he was 19-year-old, had a copy of Playboy under his bed? Did you know that? And then you come out with the anti-Semitic.
Yep.
You come out racist, the left wing and the right wing. And, just coming back to Jeremy Corbyn, because I was a member of the Labour Party for quite some time before the new guy came in called Keir Starmer, who is completely more conservative than Labour and socialist. But when Israel went to war with Egypt and Palestine, after that war, the United Nations Security Council said that their continued occupation of the Palestinian lands was contrary to international law, illegal. Now, Jeremy Corbyn and me and lots of people in the Labour Party who are Jewish say, yes, the United Nations Security Council is correct in bringing to the attention of everybody that the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories is illegal under international law. Now, because I give credence to the United Nations, that technically makes me, in the definition now, I am anti-Semitic.
Myself too.
And I've got friends who I meet with every couple of years, 2 years. We go to a spiritual gathering together, and they are from Israel. And they view what their government is doing as well as in breach and disrespectful of the Palestinian lands. It's in breach of international law. So there's a Jewish guy from Israel, and he said, I am technically anti-Semitic, and I'm a Jew.
Yeah.
And where do we? And with the sexism and transgenderism, and we get these notional. Oh yeah, you can identify yourself as a man or a woman. So a 40-year-old guy can turn up who's been found guilty of paedophilia and be found in a women's toilet. And be watching a 6-year-old girl deal with her ablutions, and the security guards can do nothing because he just says, I identify myself as a woman. And this is crazy. Absolutely, we are all free to sexually express without harming others. We are absolutely free to express our sexuality however we feel. But this for me is a step too far in terms of it's a notional freedom, while to conceal the huge freedoms that are being stolen from us in the shadows. Oh yeah, you can be a Mr., you can be a Mrs., you can be a him, her, or I, or you.
Yeah. And this playbook that they use is so effective. Why do people continue to fall for it, do you think?
Well, this comes down to what's called mass psychology. So what happens is, I share this on the website, that Hitler in the Second World War, he had a propaganda minister. And what he did, he said that if you send simple messages and you keep repeating them, then gradually people will start to follow them. And very sadly, what's happened over the last 20 years with the mobile phone and the internet, and how we're all addicted to this screen-based reality, how the media is no longer independent. All the media is owned by the same corporations that are BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street.
Yes.
But we're all controlled by the same people. So, for example, how can you have the Guardian newspaper? Have you heard of the Guardian newspaper in England?
Yeah, I have.
So the Guardian newspaper, for many, many years, 30 years, it was an independent journalist company in Manchester in the north of England. And they always gave, they were coming from the heart, and they weren't paid, that they had hardly any advertising. They just said it how it was and how they felt. But now, 3 or 4 years ago, Bill Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, started to fund The Guardian, and it's completely changed its tune. So, for example, The Guardian 3 years ago started to write articles on about the possible downsides and the possible, coming onto the vaccination programs for the COVID, saying, well, there's some things that don't make sense here. The testing, the science. And these are questions that were being raised. Questions also about 5G and the health effects on humans of 5G. And these were questions that were being debated in The Guardian. Then all of a sudden, that's all stopped. And it's not a coincidence that this is the time when the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation started injecting millions into The Guardian. And it's funny because now in the UK, it's called the Gatesian, not the Guardian. It's called the Gatesian. But how can you, and the BBC also now openly admits that it is receiving similar levels of funding from Bill Gates. So how can you have the biggest shareholder in Pfizer, Bill Gates, controlling the media, certainly the BBC and certainly The Guardian, and I'm sure he's got his fingers in lots of American media as well.
Oh, yes.
But how, if you are The Guardian newspaper and you're receiving millions in funding, if you're the BBC, are you going to say to Bill, oh, Bill, we need to write a story that there's some doubts, serious doubts about these Pfizer injections for the COVID, and people are having all sorts of side effects from them. And we really need to sort it. And Bill Gates says, no, you want the funding? You don't mention that. You don't mention that. There's conflicts of it. It's the fox guarding the hen house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all of mainstream media has been corrupted. I mean, there's not a single newspaper, magazine, maybe a few magazines and print publications, but they're considered subversive. But other than that, the mainstream media is controlled by the people that are invested in a war, conflict of one, whether it's economic conflict or violent conflict, big pharma. I mean, just look at the commercials that get played, and it's like, do you have limp dick? Do you have this disease? And I mean, I can't even watch television anymore just because of these. I mean, especially the news, which is just one big pharmaceutical ad.
Because Sean, as I may have shared with you before, I live totally off grid in the mountains in the Pyrenees. I've got solar panels. I have a beautiful source of water underground. I have no internet. I have no connection at all with anybody. And it's a dream for me. It's a creative studio space. And I've always said, since I was probably 15 or 16, I either want to live right in the middle of a humming city like London or New York or Washington, or I want to live way out in the boondocks in the mountains somewhere, totally away from everything. I don't like halfway houses. So for me, if I like to get some internet access to have this fantastic conversation with you guys, I've come to Toulouse, and I put on the news channel and I basically say, okay, so what are the disconnected? And these are the people who have now lost connection with nature and themselves and their tribe and their community. And they're people who are following the narrative that comes off the screens. They're following, the news channels. So what are they being fed with? What stories are they being fed with now? And do you remember coming back to, what you said about, where do people believe? What do they believe? And if people are tuning in to this narrative that is controlled by people with a very unhealthy agenda, then they're going to buy into it. And I studied quite a lot quantum physics and reality and what makes reality. And reality in quantum physics is beautiful. It basically says is that every individual, every 8 billion people on this planet have a choice, and they have to consent to the reality that we're in for that reality to manifest and remain. And we all have a choice, but we are being bombarded psychologically with these corrupt media messages where we see things and we think, okay, I consent to that. And because I do nothing, and doing nothing is a choice, I consent to that. And to give you an example, a really horrible example, I don't know if you get this in the States, but in the UK, a friend of mine, her 11-year-old daughter came home from school and said, Mum, I've, in social science today, we had a great sex education class. And Mum said, okay, yeah, well, so, and she said, yeah, we got this pamphlet. So this is a pamphlet produced by the Director of Education that goes to all schools. And it basically says, if you are a young child and you love an adult male, you can suck his penis. And I kid you not. And there's another picture in this pamphlet that shows a guy, an adult male, having sex with a young boy under the lines of express your freedom of sexuality. And my friend Dawn and 7 other mums went down to the school the next day and said, what the hell do you think you're doing showing my daughter and our classmates this? And the head teacher said, well, the government says that we have to do it under the sexual liberation education of children. And they were furious, and the mum said, my child deserves the right to experience and express her sexuality as and when she wants, and not to be corrupted down to thinking that this sort of behavior is acceptable. And I totally agree with her. And, this is a big thing that's going on, at the moment, like the lowering of age of sex consent in the UK. Theresa May, an ex-Prime Minister, wanted the age of consent to be lowered to 13 or 14. Hey, come on. I got kids. Kids went through that age. And, my kids, they have their sexuality, their expression. Fantastic. Whether they want to be bi, trans, whatever, that is fantastic. The world needs love in all sorts of relations. The world's be love. But let these children flower. Let their sexuality flower and blossom at the way they want it to. And let it naturally emerge, and not then feel any pressure that they have to choose this or that or accept that this behavior is normal. No. And this is crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that here. We have maybe the opposite, the lack of sex education altogether, especially in some of these red states where you've got high pregnancy rates, high STD rates. Kids don't know anything about, safe sex. So it's almost the opposite here. But you have a more liberal attitude too over on that side of the pond when it comes to sex than we do here in the United States, I think.
Yeah, quite possibly. And there is an openness, but there is rapidly, it's because in Europe there is more, I think, more than in the States. And I've been to New York, I've been to Chicago, spent a lot of time there, and I think definitely there is more openness of sexuality and expression in Europe, but that openness is very healthy because, hey, lots of kids want to express their sexuality, but they are afraid that they're going to be rejected by their parents and their peer groups if they do that, which of course is tragic, and if a boy expresses love for a boy, fantastic. If a girl expresses love for a girl, fantastic. If a girl feels that, she's more masculine than male and wants to actually be express as a male, fantastic. Because, we should all be free to have that expression and Absolutely. Do that in a way that nourishes us and does no harm to other people. So, but where do you draw the line? But this very sinister sex education that's going on at the moment. I don't know if it's the same in the States, but now we had LGBT, lesbian, gay, bi, trans as a group here, and now P is being added. So
being what?
Now pedophilia is being added to one of the LGBTP. So pedophilia is being decriminalized. And as much as I know that a lot of people who are pedophiles have had lots of suffering themselves, and it's very common in Europe. Apparently, 80% of pedophiles have actually been victims of pedophilia, which is an explanation, but not a justification for continuing that practice. But now we're moving to a place in Europe where if you discriminate or you're anti-pedophile, you could be committing a crime in 2 years' time. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier about the World Economic Forum. Can you just tell our audience, who is likely not aware of what this organization is, this pseudo government, and what their agenda is?
So the World Economic Forum is a group of big power holders. So the likes of Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, the King of England, Klaus Schwab is the founder, Angela Merkel, Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister. They all meet once a year in Switzerland at a place called Davos. And they've been doing so for the past 20 or 25 years. And they have a very clear agenda about where they want to go. And it's about total control of the world. So one of the things they want to do is to destroy the current economy so that the economy is completely broken. And then they will give people what's called universal credit. So they can buy food, they can work, and there will be one global currency, one global cryptocurrency for everybody. So the end of the dollar, the end of the euro, the end of the pound, the end of the yen. And it's really interesting how, if you look at all these currencies at the moment, how the dollar, the pound, and the euro are all looking at parity, 1-to-1. It's like, 2-3 years ago, you get $1.50 to the pound. It's now, and the euro, they're all converging. And that's not a coincidence. And the problem with the cryptocurrency is it's programmable. So you earn it, but then they control how you spend it. And if you want to spend money if you want to donate to the Canadian truck drivers next freedom protest next year, it's not allowed. You can't do that. And if you said things against the government, you can't buy certain goods in shops. You can't go on bus. It's the China model. So China is the model that the World Economic Forum are using, and it's their blueprint for the rest of the world. And one of their mantras is, you will own nothing and be happy.
Yes. Is that actually, are you referring to the book?
Yeah. Yeah. So World Economic Forum, you will own nothing and be happy. And on our website, there's a video for one of the songs, which the last song we did, which I think was called The Rebel. But you check out there, this in China, it's called Factory City. And it's called Factory City, and basically you live in a city that is a factory. You get up in the morning, you have your breakfast in a canteen, you go across the road, you work in the factory, you have your lunch, you go back to work, and then you come home and you sleep in the accommodation quarter, and then you go back to work. Check out factory cities in China. So unfortunately, these are the model for all of us. So that the World Economic Forum has an agenda of total control of the human race. And Bill Gates, as one of their avatars, for every 8 billion people on the earth, there is a trawled avatar. So, for example, for you, Sean, where you went, who your parents were, where they were born, where you were born, every visit you made to the doctor, every prescription that you made at the pharmacy, when you went shopping, how long you looked at the alcohol, how long you looked at the organic food products, all this information, which 20 years ago would have been completely impossible to hold on you and me, is now possible through what's called quantum computing.
Yeah.
So, you know, when Bill Gates said 2 years ago, we need to vaccinate every person on the planet, 8 billion people. 20 years ago, it would, and I have a computer science background, 8 years ago, it would have been inconceivable to have a database big enough for 8 billion people, where somebody coming from Gujarat in northern India wants to come to Washington to meet a cousin, and they stop them at immigration and say, you haven't had the right vaccinations. We can see it. To have a database that size, that responsive, would have been impossible. But with quantum computing, which is kept under wraps, you know, we know nothing. We know that much about the science that is available to the military and the governments today.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all being there, and you know, I know from my computer science background that if you were to go 8 years ago and say, hey, let's build an avatar for Sean St. Hart, so we know where he buys his gasoline, where he goes for lunch, who he meets for lunch. No, forget it. You know, we'll keep that for the unsavory people, the people who are challenging us. But now there's Bill Gates, his mission is to build a digital avatar for every person on the planet.
Yeah, let's talk about Bill Gates. This man is really something else. I mean, I'm so sick of these charities that are not charities, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Obama's got one, which is just... no, I'm sorry, not Obama. The Clintons have one, the Clinton Global Initiative, which is another control mechanism, absolute fraud. How in the hell did Bill Gates go from being just this billionaire inventor? He's bought up most of the farmland in the United States now, as if he's a farmer, and is doing this all publicly. It's not being really hidden. It's not being discussed in the media. But if you look, you see this happening all around. How did he even get to this position? And who are the others that are? I mean, we know Angela Merkel. We know, you know, pretty much every leader in any position of government is part of this World Economic Forum and this capitalistic agenda. What do you think Bill Gates is? Does he really think he's saving the planet?
So, I mean, this is stretching the imagination, but so when you know, in another life, I worked for a big American bank. JP Morgan.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we were, at that time, we were one of the pilot sites for Microsoft Windows and Bill Gates' product. So Bill Gates himself doesn't know the arse end of a computer from the front end. He would, you know, at that time, he didn't know the mouse from the mouse man. So he got a lot of finance from his parents, you know, venture capital from his parents. So And it was a brilliant business model. And Windows was a great product. You know, it enabled people to who were non-technical to integrate with the technical world on a PC, and it's fantastic. But the revenue that comes, you know, from Microsoft, so I don't know, is it, you know, Bill Gates gets 2 billion streams of recurring revenue every year. I mean, the money he makes in recurring revenues, you know, Windows licenses, is just enormous. So, you know, what do you do with that money? You know, it's like the cabal, Rothschilds, who controls 95% of the reserve banks in the world. You know, he prints the money, the dollar, prints the pound, prints the euro. No, and anybody else does it, it's fraud, and you could be executed. But these people, money is no longer important to them. It's nothing. So they have another agenda where there's something else that's more important to them, which we can maybe go into another time. But coming back to Bill Gates. So Bill Gates is on record as saying 3 or 4 years ago in a slip that we need to reduce the world's population by half. So
did he volunteer? Did he?
But Sean, think about this. If you want to wipe out a species, how do you go about it? If it was me, I'd say, okay, we'll wipe that species out. First of all, I'm going to destroy their fertility so they can't go on creating more of them. Is that happening now? Are fertility rates plummeting? I'll create a war so that they kill each other. Is that happening now? Are we faced with the possibility of the Third World War? Is that happening now? I'm going to put pesticides, herbicides, and chemicals in their water and food so it causes cancer. Is that happening now? And, you know, these guys have got their own agenda. And it's, you know, for me, I think it's a little far-fetched for me to share some of that in a moment. And, you know, we can maybe do this offline, Sean, and come back to it a way that, you know, might be a little bit more easy listening for your listeners. But these guys have got their own agenda. Money is nothing to them. And, you know, for example, you know, earlier on I said my dad, he lost both his parents to polio when he was 11. But my dad was one of 8 children, and none of those, my dad nor his siblings, were vaccinated. They didn't die of polio because their immune system had kicked in and said, we know how to deal with this now. My dad wanted me and my sister and my brothers to have it because they thought it was the best thing for me. So, you know, 40, 50 something years ago, I had a polio vaccine. And I haven't had polio. So I'm not anti-vaccine. But the question is, so if there is a safe, proven, for 50 years, a polio vaccine, why is Bill Gates being allowed to experiment with a new polio vaccine? We don't need one. But there in, you know, in Africa and India, where he's been, you know, with his anti-malarial campaigns that have achieved nothing, but he's experimenting with injections on impoverished people. What's going on there? And all that's happening is fertility's dropping and people are dying. Is Bill the angel of death?
Yeah. No, well, no, I mean, and that's a good point. I mean, and you're not even allowed to talk about the COVID vaccine. You know, I mean, you're not allowed to have questions. You're not allowed to challenge anything. You're just supposed to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely undemocratic, completely unhealthy. I mean, if you and I have a disagreement on something, let's have a healthy, open debate where we can share our views. And because I challenge somebody else's views, I don't want to be described as a conspiracy theorist. You know, Copernicus, I think, was the first conspiracy theorist because he challenged the church, 400 years ago, the king at the time, and said, I think the earth goes round the sun and the sun doesn't go round the earth. And he was, virtually burnt at the stake.
Yeah.
And the other great one is Noah was considered a conspiracy theorist until the waters rose. And he built Noah's Ark, but they all said, you're mad. So
yeah, it's insane.
Conspiracy theory. Hey, if we've got someone's got a different view to somebody else, let's have it in an open debate. Let's talk about it and share it. But don't just say, oh no, you're spreading fake news.
Yeah. Or the big thing is misinformation. It's misinformation and it's dangerous.
Yeah. And if you look at, I don't know how it is in the United States, over here in the UK and Europe, if you look at any of what are called the accepted fact checkers, they're all tainted by the Bill Gates and the Rothschilds funds.
Yeah.
Merriam-Webster, the British Encyclopedia. So, the definition of a vaccine got conveniently changed. I mean, who has the power to change what the definition of a vaccine is because it fits the big pharma model?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a vaccine to me if you have to take it over and over and over again.
No. I mean, hey, there's an unfortunate saying going around in Europe at the moment, which is, for example, only the old and the stupid are still wearing masks. And I don't like that expression because, it doesn't sit with me. But, people who are in fear. So the way we are controlled is the government introduces fear. There's going to be a terrorist attack. It's going to be a terrorist attack, but if you do as we tell you, it'll be okay. There's going to be this awful epidemic, and you're all possibly, going to have ill health, and a lot of you are going to die. But if you do as we tell you, you'll be okay. So I've got some friends who, I've got a friend, he had the maximum number of 5 shots, anti-COVID. He went in, he had some heart palpitations, and he went into hospital in London to get his heart checked. They gave him a test before he went in, and they said, you can't come in because you've got COVID. And he said, I've had 5 shots. How can I have COVID? Anyway, I had a flu where I had loss of taste, temperature, completely lethargic for 3 or 4 days. I stayed in bed with bottles of ginger beer, my favorite soda water, rested, and after 6 days of sweating and headaches, I'm back running 5Ks every morning again. And my immune system, the grace of the universe, is strong. And I've never had anything since. But, a lot of my friends have taken precautions, and they've said, I felt I needed to have it. And we each do what we feel is in our best interest. So that's what's called being human.
Yeah. Well, and the problem that I have with people is that what is in your best interest is not always your own decision. You've often been manipulated into believing a certain narrative that something is in your best interest. And so you believe that to be true. There's various ways that they do that, but fear is absolutely one of them. I mean, that was the insane argument about going into Iraq was a fear-based argument that, if we don't go there to get them, then we'll be fighting them over here when they come to get us. It's that repetition of fear over and over and over again. And so people do come to this understanding of, well, such and such is in my best interest. I mean, when you talk about masks, it's research, there's studies that have come out that show that masks do not work with against COVID-19. Now, maybe the N95 masks work, but these masks that people are wearing are totally ineffective. And the studies and literature says that. So why are we still, in this frames? I mean, I see people wearing masks all the time.
I know, it's crazy. It's not so much here in Europe that people are doing it, and I think that a lot of people in Europe are losing patience with it. But it's as I say in one of our songs, up the fear, tighten the control. Government gates and the media show. And, we are, in terms of how we are controlled, the government, deep state, they don't want unity in the community.
Oh, right.
A united people are a threat to them. So divisions along race, color, culture are great. I don't know if you heard about 3 or 4 years ago, Angela Merkel invited 1 million refugees into Germany. And on the face of it, it was seen as a very nice gesture. But in amongst these, genuine refugees were economic refugees, former ISIS fighters. And in Germany, it created huge tension because you had these German people living in their own communities. And now, thrust upon them is this huge influx of communities who do not share the same values, do not share the same religion, do not want the same law. So I love reducing things down to a community. So if we had a community of 100 people, you and I, where there are people growing food, people hunting, people preserving food, there are herbalists, medicalists, there's a carpenter, there's a plumber, an electrician, somebody looking after the water, somebody looking after the children, somebody looking after the elders. And it's all working beautifully, we're all valued. And then all of a sudden, in our community of 100, 200, 30 people arrive, and somebody up there has told us, you've got to take these people. And they say, we have different values, we don't respect your laws, we want to install our own laws, we don't want to work the way you want to work, but give us food, give us shelter. What are you, the community, going to say? You're going to say, hey guys, you either come and work with us and become valued members of our community, or you better look somewhere else, because you ain't coming here. But what's happened in Germany is it's created a complete disunity. And that's what functions, power centers function on, is disunity. If they're fighting each other, they're not fighting the government.
Yeah. So, and we see that partisanship here in the United States. And back to your point about them being this cabal, this government cabal, not wanting us to unite as a community. Lahaina in Hawaii, there's been a number of mutual aid campaigns where people just come together and they're like, we're going to set up food tents. We're going to, you've lost your homes to this fire. So we're going to do this mutual aid where we come together as a community and we hand out food. We provide what's needed. And now the state governor is cracking down on mutual aid, saying that it really only it needs to come from official sources like the governments or nonprofit organizations. You guys can't do that on your own. That's just another example of them not wanting people brought together. Yeah,
it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. To give an example of community and community power. So in a small town where I live, each year the mayor, they have a meeting about the budgets, what they're going to spend on police, what they're going to spend on fire, what they're going to spend on healthcare, what they're going to spend on the gardens. But the people who pay the taxes that fund that, they have just zero say. So for example, some friends and I, we went to a mayor's meeting, where people were talking about the budget for the next year. And they said, well, in the community, for example, there's a huge, there's a ratio of something like for every 500 people, there's a policeman armed. So if you were to say to the community, hey guys, instead of the guy with the petrol mower blowing the leaves around to clean the streets, would you rather see that money spent on a hospital for the kids? Rather than have all these lights on at night, would you rather turn it off and put the money towards, an extra class for school, rather than have an armed policeman for every 500 people? Do we really need that? Do we really need to pay for that? Shall we set up a new library? These are topics of conversation we would have in a community, but this is just another example of how we've surrendered our power to somebody else up there making the decisions for us. Very sad.
It is.
It might be time for This Being Human.
Yes, I was just going to.
This Being Human about.
I was just going to ask if we could play that. I was thinking, so especially we were talking about Bill Gates, and you got a song that talks specifically about Bill Gates. So yeah, let me see if my producer will play This Being Human.
Money rates
I lost your voice, Sean.
Oh, sorry there. I wanted to mute myself for the song, and I forgot to unmute myself. I just wanted to. I was just telling my audience that what we just heard was "This Being Human" from the Cides. This is a new album. Am I correct?
Yeah. The title of the album is called "The Rebel."
The Rebel.
"This Being Human" is one of the key tracks. February. On International Social Justice Day.
I'm sure that wasn't coincidental.
Yeah.
What's the date again?
I think it's February the 20th. But it's marked as International Social Justice Day. So that's the release date.
The song touches upon something that I'll admit I'm not that familiar with, but transhumanism. Can you speak on that and talk about what that is, what that means, that word transhumanism?
Yeah. So for me, transhumanism, it's where do we distinguish between being human and being a machine?
Right.
So we as human beings have the beautiful ability to recognize suffering in another human being, to recognize where we can give support and be compassionate with other human beings. Even to the extent of sacrificing our own well-being in support of another human being. A human being having a human being able to connect with the spiritual world. So I have the beautiful experience of having had a shamanic teacher, a guy from the US who now lives in Scandinavia. So there was a time in my life where I felt particularly lost, and this American shamanic teacher helped me understand a lot about myself and then about spiritual energy and my ancestors. And, so spiritual energy for me is really key. And so these attributes of being human, that are heartfelt, soul-felt, they are not in a machine. They are not in an piece of artificial intelligence. They're not sentient beings. And they can mimic human behavior. Absolutely, without doubt, in a couple of years' time, if not already, there will be artificial intelligence that is way more powerful than the brain. And what happens with that? And on this topic of computing, so we've now got these incredible concepts of quantum computing, but we have to bear in mind that the most powerful computing on the Earth is made up through natural resources on the Earth. Semiconductors, silicon, precious metals, superconductors. And it's just humans, scientific humans, who have connected up these Earth elements in a way to make them into a processor. But we're primitive. I mean, you could look at the Earth as a supercomputer, and the humans have got, with this little grain of sand of knowledge, how to connect up some elements of it to make a computer. But there can be no computers without the connectivity of these essential elements of the Earth. So the Earth itself could be a huge computer, and somebody else somewhere else is actually farming us and the Earth as a computer. So, computers can't exist without natural minerals and elements that are here on the Earth. And we've just learned how to connect them up to make a computer. So coming back to AI, I feel that nature, the universe, I don't like to use the word God. I don't think, for me as an anarchist, I respect people have their own beliefs. That's absolutely fine. But for me, when people talk about God, first of all, I say, well, what about goddess? And then I say to people, so what do you mean by God? Is it, is it that guy like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings with the long beard and long white hair with a magic wand who, makes things? And I don't have much time for that, but I do believe in the super creativity of the universe. And the indigenous American Indians call it, the great mystery. They don't refer to gods.
Right.
I like, but so my concern is this: in terms of when I accept that the cabal have a control agenda, and in furtherance of the control agenda, for example, about 11 years ago in the UK, after the dogs were being chipped, dog passports, so to move dogs around. If you wanted to go from one country in Europe to another, you have a dog passport. And the dog has a chip in the back of its neck. And there was talk about having chips for old people who forget their medication, forget when their benefits are due, so that they can go to the pharmacy and the pharmacy just has to do that, and they say, oh yes, this is your medication, you need 10 of these, 12 of these, this is the day when your benefits are due. But so the government was trying to sell this story that for the elderly people who are can't keep records and are not sure their medication, they should be chipped, the elderly people, and then perhaps that chipping of the elderly people should be extended to other vulnerable people. There's always a good, an ounce of integrity and truth and well-meaning in it. But of course, a chip for the human race is what's needed. And there was a lot of resistance against that. And in the end, the government stepped down. And they stepped down because of the mobile phone. And they said, it's fucking great, because here we are trying to chip the human race, but now we've got them addicted to the mobile phone, and it's not a chip in the brain or in the neck, but they're carrying it around because they want it and they don't want to be separated from it. So now they've got this chip, and it's beautiful. So, a smartphone today, the government knows within 1 meter your movements in real time.
Yeah.
They know where you are. But now what's being marketed by people like Elon Musk and the neurochip is to say, hey guys, your mobile phone, you've got to charge it up. You sometimes got to connect to the internet. You got to do this, you got to do that. You put a chip in the brain, you have a neural connection now, and all the apps on your phone, you just imagine them and they're triggered. So now there is a computer that is working with your brain, which they deem to be a computer. So the brain can be considered as a computer.
Yeah.
What makes the brain special is the brain in a human is subordinate to the soul and the spirit and the heart. That's where it gets its overriding instructions from. So we've had for 20, 30, 40 years what's called distributed computing, where computers work with each other to achieve a task. So I don't know if you remember 20, 30, 40 years ago, there were universities around the world saying we need to map the expansion of the universe, but we don't have the computing power to do it. So would everybody at home that's got a PC, would all the universities, the hospitals, when they shut down at night, would they offer their computing resource to this program of NASA to, explore the expansion of the universe? But in that control structure, there is always one central node controlling the other computers. So when we get this chip in the brain, the Neuralink, which is going to be the subordinate processor? Is it going to be the chip or the brain?
Right.
And it's easy. For example, if you've got chronic from sciatica, and this chip in the brain says, oh, I know how to switch off that pain. So now you won't feel it. So the brain's going to say, okay, I'll switch off that pain. So now you switch it off, and it's great because you've got pain relief. And if you've got impaired vision, and the chip in the brain says, I can work on that and give you clear vision. And these are tangible benefits. But what when the chip, the computer on the chip says, I'm going to switch off your emotions? How do we control who has the upper hand? So at the moment, human beings, the brain is ruled by the heart and the soul and feelings. But now when you get this chip, who's telling the brain what to do? Where is, and that's my great fear about transhumanism. And where does it go? Where does it go? I mean, bear in mind that these people are controlling these sciences. Money is nothing to them. They've got more than they can ever want. They've got another agenda. I don't know how it is in the United States, but in Europe, if you were to go to a train station, you would normally have, like, in a big town, big city, you'd have 15, 20 people selling tickets in a kiosk. Like, when I went to Grand Central Station, there'd be, there's 20 people employed selling tickets to people. Now in the UK, there's none. There's machines. You go to a supermarket and there used to be people running the checkouts. There's 19 machines and one person in case the machine has. So where are all these, the jobs are going to the machines, and the jobs are not being recreated. People are being made obsolete. And,
they are.
For me and my parents, we valued ourselves on our job and how we had a pride in doing our job and putting food on the table and paying for our accommodation through doing a job. But now there's no job. And, it's like, to a certain extent, I can understand that, and I don't like it, but profit for shareholders is the motivation of corporations. It's not creating jobs where people feel valued. It's about profit. And I really do hope we come back soon to a community where we say, hey, profit for shareholders is much less important to humans than people having worthwhile jobs and feeling they're welcome and contributing to society. And, we may have to go back to the pre-industrial age. Jobs for people are much more important than profit for shareholders.
Well, not if you ask the shareholders.
I know Bill Gates wouldn't agree with me.
Yeah, he will definitely disapprove of that whole idea. But no, you're right. And again, it comes down to mechanisms of control. And when you say the word surrender, we have surrendered so much of this. I don't know if you have it over there, but here in the United States, we have these loyalty cards where, you want to shop at this grocery store. We'll give you a loyalty card, and then you'll get these little coupons every once in a while, or will give you points, right? And so we sign up for all of these cards that track everything that we're purchasing, everything that we're doing. I mean, I don't think you can use the internet now without being tracked and identified. And a lot of this has been presented to us at one time as a convenience. You know, like you said, hey, take this chip, and if you can't see, well, not a problem. The chip will rewire the brain, and you'll be able to see again. And so we say, hey, that's great. That's convenience. That's wonderful. And so we don't think about the broader applications. So we have surrendered to these technologies and these databases, and to be tracked on so many. We literally, when we go to a website, are consenting to do so. I mean, that is surrender.
It is, and and we do it through convenience, and we do it through things, insecurity as well. It's like,
oh yeah,
how many people, because of whatever trauma they've suffered in childhood, in growing up, where they haven't felt valued. And they've been disappointed perhaps by their parents' behavior towards them. But how many people, they champion, they say, oh, I've got 400 friends on Facebook. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but 65% of all friends and internet traffic is AI. They're not beings. They're not humans. They're bots making friends with people to make them feel good. And,
yeah.
that level of disconnection. I mean, it's just, I gave up a mobile phone nearly 3 years ago, and it's great. I interact with the people around me. We communicate. There are so many places, like when I come here into a city like Toulouse, people they're at dinner and they're not talking to each other. They're on their phones, eating and drinking on their phones. And it's incredible. I mean, you've got to admit, these guys are so fucking clever. I mean, can you imagine 200 years ago, this box of electrics called the mobile phone, it just had no role. But we got on really well as communities. But it's a part of the division of the community, I think, the mobile phone. And everybody wants the immediacy of a response. Oh, I sent you a message. I posted that. You didn't respond. What did I do wrong? Don't you like me? Or, and even now, and universe forbid, there are still some tribes, like, Amazonian tribes, who have very little contact with the outside world and still living as they lived 400 or 500 years ago. If you were to go to them and offer them, the new iPhone, or you'd offer them an axe that cuts wood, they're going to take the axe that cuts wood. And they open their mobile phone and go, what the fuck's that? How did we get to this place of this complete voluntary hypnotization to embrace the chip that is coming into the brain, but we just now carry around with it in our hands? And we're just there. You go on a subway, you go on a train, you go to an airport, and it's there. We've all gradually, because we've been bombarded with this mass psychology of messages, that this is how we should behave.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's very clever, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's genius. It's absolute genius. It's just, unfortunately, I don't like the words good and evil, but this man is evil. And one day, and it could happen because of natural events, solar storms, reverse of the Earth's polarity. But one day, the lights are all going to go out. So all these people who are addicted to the phone, when one day there's no power, There's no signal. What do we do? What do we do? Is that the end of the world? When they're all there in a restaurant and sitting around a table and there's no screen, there's no interaction. What do you do? What is it to be human? Talk to each other, socialize, you know?
But again, the powers that be don't want us talking to each other because they're afraid that we might find that we have more in common than we disagree with, and therefore might rebel.
They only want us talking together on the topics that they want to be.
Absolutely.
Which is why, you know, people like us, we've been deplatformed by YouTube. The Cides are spreading fake news. When we tried to raise money for the Canadian truck drivers 2 years ago for their freedom convoy and PayPal refused, we raised nearly $800 for the Canadian truckers, and PayPal refused to pay it to them because they said no, they're spreading fake news.
Yeah, it's the end of freedom.
Yeah. And you know, what's so tragic is, I think over the last 20 years, you know, in my kids' generation, they don't actually know what freedom really is. So they're desensitized to the loss of it.
Yeah.
Because we've had this huge marketing job done on us that we think, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, it's okay. But, you know, and I always say, my kids say, well, Dad, what do you believe? Where do you get your values from? And I say, kids, I believe what I feel in my heart, see with my eyes. Anything else that comes out of a screen is maybe, but no. If I don't feel it in my heart, I don't see it in my eyes, if I don't witness it with integrity myself, no, it has no value, no truck. You know. So you know, I say to people, feel in your heart, switch off the screen for a while and see how it feels in your heart, what's going on around you. Sense the energy. Human beings have an immense capability of energy sensing. You know, it's proved from the Greeks that human beings have got not just 6 senses, they've got 300. We can smell fear, we can smell happiness, you know, we can feel connection, but all of those have been eroded, those senses have been eroded and made obsolete, you know, because we've been conditioned by the media. But you know, human beings are incredibly powerful, sensitive beings, but we've just had it conditioned out of us, you know.
Absolutely.
We've been hypnotized.
Yeah.
Bring it back. We need rebels.
Yeah,
You know?
it's engineering of humanity is what this has become.
Yeah. You know, where's it going to go? And you know, maybe you'll play the song "The Rebel" next. But in terms of, you know, the way that I look at it is when you are part of the cabal and these people who control all the wealth of the world, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Fords, the Bushes, the Hindenburgs, all those guys who sit, you know, very close to the top of the pyramid, money's worth nothing to them, nothing. So what is it they're so interested in? And I personally think that what it is, it's called human energy, is that the universe, you know, as you might know, when we're in mum's womb and the fetus becomes viable between 2 and 3 months, all of a sudden, this fetus generates its own heartbeat. It's like somebody's put a Duracell battery in the fetus, and all of a sudden it becomes a little spiritual being. It starts to beat. And, you know, for me, I think, well, maybe it's something that they're farming human energy. Because they don't want human money. They have their captains of industry, their managers who want to get wealthy out of exploiting humans. But them at the top, money is nothing. So I just think that nature, the universe, has this real precious spiritual energy that they don't have control over, but they want to mine, they want to farm, is what I think. And that's what they're interested in. And now they're taking away, and you see on one of our videos in our songs, I think it's Elon Musk has now got these human incubators where they can breed up to 30,000 babies a year in incubators without human intervention, so that they're inviting this spiritual energy to come in to these fetuses, but under their complete control. And sadly, I think that's the sinister side of it, is that they're actually farming human energy.
Yeah.
Anyone who thinks I'm bonkers and wants to give me a counter opinion, I'm very open to hearing what you've got to say, but I just can't think of anything else. Because when money means nothing to these guys, what is it that they're after?
I want to play, if it's okay, I want to play The Rebel.
Yeah. Top. Yeah. Yeah, love it.
I want to reason like an anarchist. Reasons. Stand with a fist. The way an anarchist reasons. No gods, no masters above us, no religion, no hell down below. There's a rebel inside me, and it's coming to play. Remembered, I don't want to be remembered as someone who didn't answer the call, as someone who sold out on freedom, stood silent while they rebuilt the wall. There's a rebel inside me, and it's coming to play. There's a rebel inside me, and its time is today. Shout back, fight back. The darkness grows, its grip gets tighter. You gotta step up, become a freedom fighter. Standing, lying and falling. I feel better than doing nothing at all. And never give up fighting. And never turn our backs to the wall. There's a rebel inside me, and it's coming to play. There's a rebel inside me, and its time is today. There's a rebel inside me, and it's coming to play. There's a rebel inside me, and its time is today. There's a rebel inside me, and it's coming to play. There's a rebel inside me, and its time is today. There's a rebel inside me.
That song, and this is another example of why I find you so amazing. This song is actually about something, a very brave protest that occurred. I wonder if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so after the Second World War, Germany got divided up into various quarters but basically there ended up being a wall that divided East and West Germany, with the communists on one side in the East and the capitalists on the West, and the Berlin Wall got built. And so it was a wall dividing people who'd been living together for tens of thousands of years. All of a sudden now a wall built down the middle of them. And the war was about ideology, and communist versus capitalist ideologies. And then when the wall came down, the wall came down originally because of a protest shortly after the, do you remember Tiananmen Square in China?
Yep.
Protests, when there's a great picture of a guy standing in front of a tank with a flower. So this protest in Leipzig, it spread, and eventually it led to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the communist powers that were monitoring the wall in East Berlin, they had tanks and machine guns, but they were basically now gone from a small amount of people to tens and hundreds of thousands of people. And they said, well, we've either got to let these people demonstrate and make their point, or we're going to have to shoot them. And they didn't. And this was the catalyst for the taking down of the Berlin Wall. And so this song is about celebrating the taking down of the wall, but it's highlighting as well that while the wall was being taken down, there were other walls that the cabal were building to divide people along the lines of religion, ideology, culture, wealth, non-wealth, black, white, race, sexuality. So while the Berlin Wall was a huge symbol of people being reunited after being divided by a wall that had been just created completely unnaturally because of ideological and political reasons, being taken down, and now the people could unify again. But it was a cover. It was a beautiful gesture, and I really celebrated it back in the day. But at the same time, covertly, they were building other walls, divide people. So this song is about celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall and those courageous people who risked their lives to say, we want to be a unified community again. But reminding people how the cabal is building its own other walls to divide us. So they acquiesce in one way, which looks great, but in the shadows they're building these other walls,
other oppressive,
and and on this topic of division, I don't know if we spoke about this last time, Sean, about left wing and right wing.
Oh, right. I don't know if we talked about it on the air or not. But yeah, go ahead. This is.
So essentially, when, today, I refer to them as the cabal, the people who control the media, they refer to people as left-wing or right-wing extremists, and they talk about right-wing extremists. I've got some stories about being in Berlin for an anti-freedom of choice COVID vaccination demo 2 or 3 years ago. But do you know where the term left-wing and right-wing comes from?
Actually, I don't know that I do, no.
Okay, so going back to 1700s in France, you had a King Louis, and he was the king, the monarch, And when there were meetings between leaders of the counties, the barons, the viscounts, those that were in favour of supporting the establishment would sit on the right, and those that wanted to challenge the authority, the installed authority, the king at the time, would sit on the left. So that's where the terms left wing and right wing come from.
Interesting.
So Adolf Hitler, because he challenged the Kaiser of Germany at the time, was considered left wing. And there we get National Socialism, which led to fascism. So fascism, National Socialism in Germany, they were left wingers. And the same with Stalin. You know, when they executed the Tsar of Russia, they were contrary to the installed regime. So they were on the left, you know, and Stalin, you know, was equally as bad as Hitler in terms of oppressing people. So these terms, left wing and right wing, are complete bollocks. But they're bandied around, you know, by the cabal. Oh, they're right-wing extremists. But they, any, you know, if we go back to definitions, and you remember we talked a little while ago about how the cabal has changed the definition of a vaccination. And now what are they changing about left-wing and right-wing? Because, you know, in terms of left-wing and right-wing, these are where the terms come from. If you challenge the installed or the incumbent authority, you sat on the left of them. If you supported them, you sat on the right.
Interesting.
So these terms are completely bloody meaningless. And, you know, when I went to Berlin, probably 2 years ago now, about a freedom of choice with the vaccination, there was a huge demonstration. Christians, Buddhists, Islamists, born-again Christians, environmentalists, Extinction Rebellionists. It was a huge, great, massive party. You couldn't see the one end of it from this esplanade to the other. It was huge. And it was completely peaceful. People singing, dancing. Robert Kennedy Jr. spoke there and gave a really nice, meaningful speech. The next day, it got reported in 2 newspapers. And they said, oh, yeah, there were a few hundred people there. A few hundred people. Now, I've been to football games of Manchester United, and their capacity of ground is 100,000 people. I know what 100,000 people looks like. And when I, you know, went to Berlin and saw the size of this demonstration, there's no way it was a few hundred or a few thousand people. It was huge. But the next day, there were no, in the German press, there were no reports of the size of it and how beautiful it was as a party of expression of people about freedom of choice. But what happened at the end of it, when I was leaving, there were about 20 trucks turned up, black trucks. And these guys in black costumes and masks got out and started throwing bricks and rocks at the Parliament building in Germany. And these were the people who got the press the next day. Not the hundreds of thousands of peaceful protesters dancing, singing, but these guys who turned up in these mysterious black wagons at the end and started throwing Molotov cocktails and rocks. They were the ones that got the press. And the next day, there were a few hundred, maybe a couple of thousand protesters, but they were attacking and vandalizing. And this is complete distortion of what actually happened.
Yeah.
You know, and I know there was in America, you know, was it called the Million Mile March or Million People March, where People from
Right.
South America were. Do you remember that? And then I
Yeah.
saw a documentary showing how these people were carrying fashion handbags, designer shoes, and they were put on buses to go to different places. And it was actually created by Charles Schwab, a millionaire financier, and then it didn't
Yep.
happen at all. And there was another protest, I don't know where it was in the US, where somebody from CNN or Fox, said to these protesters, so why are you here? And he said, oh, we're here because we're communists and we're protesting against the government. And the guy said, so what sort of communists are you? And the guy said, what do you mean, what sort of communists? He said, well, are you Marxists? Are you Leninists? Are you Trotskyists? And the guy said, what? And they didn't know who, they were pretending to be communists, but they didn't know who Marx was, who Stalin was, who Lenin was, Trotsky was. And the guy said, have you been paid to come here and protest? And the guy said, I mean,
Yeah.
It's such a distortion, and it's enough to drive you to drink.
Yeah, I hear you. We're almost out of time, so I want to get to the last song that you this is it's originally this is England, but you did a very special version for this show. I want you to talk about that if you could.
Yeah.
And then we'll go right into it.
Yeah, so as I touched on at the beginning of the show, I think England and America share very special places in the expression of independence and human rights. And with the Magna Carta and the American Constitution, and how English people, Americans, fighting for their independence, spilt blood to have their constitution, to preserve basic human rights of freedom of expression, the right to bear arms in the United States, for example, which is a huge problem for the cabal that they don't have in England. So I wrote this song originally because I wanted to remind the English people how their ancestors courageously risked their lives for basic freedoms to exist, to grow food, to hunt, to put food on their table for them and their family, how they risked their lives to do that, and how similarly the Americans at the time adopted the Magna Carta into the American Constitution, and the Americans fiercely fought for their independence from the French and the English and for basic human rights. And they spilled blood, and we shouldn't forget that. So this song is about, I originally wrote it because I'm born in London, I grew up in London, and I wanted to remind the English people about what our ancestors actually did to guarantee these constitutional rights, that they can't be changed. The Magna Carta cannot be changed without the consent of an overall majority of the English people voting. It can't be done. And in the English law courts, they pretend that there is this statute and parliament law that they create that's called contract law, but they actually admit now to the supremacy of the Magna Carta as common law. And I'm sure it's the same in the United States. It's your constitution is sacred law that is above any contract law that's written by any court anywhere, any corporation. So I wrote it originally for the English people to say, hey guys, your ancestors, you rose up and you volunteered to die, sacrifice your lives for the freedom of men. And in America, the American Constitution, the forefathers, they similarly stood up and said, we want our freedom or you can kill us. And that's why when we were recording Wake Up England earlier this week, and I knew I had the privilege of coming on your show, Sean, and I thought, fuck, the American guys, they stood up as well. Fuck, they fought for their freedoms. So that's when I thought, do you know what? I'm going to just change the chorus to Wake Up America, so that you guys have got a version of Wake Up America. And it's a very primitive version because we haven't had a long time to produce it. There's a lot missing. Some of the backing vocals are not there. There's some of the guitar that's not there. But I just felt really appropriate, Sean, that I could give you a message of support, you guys in America, and give you Wake Up America.
Thank you. With that, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to play out with This Is America. If we can cue that up. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, we're going to come back. We're going to come back. Hold on. We're going to come back. Let's play This Is America.
Wake Up America.
Wake Up America. And
Wake up, America.
wake up.
Listen. Wake up, America, wake up. Wake the fuck up. Repression, repression, agents of the state, repression. Governments bribe to feed us all lies, repression. Repression, repression, agents of the state, repression. We're being sold existence in the machine. Wake up, America, wake up. We need a liberation day. A hurricane is building. A revolution's on the way. Wake up, America,
Wake up.
wake up. We need a liberation day. A hurricane is building. A revolution's on the way. Wake the fuck up, America. Wake up, America, wake up. More rules, more regulations every day. Whichever way it cuts, you've got to pay. Corruption, corruption, this is the government way. And drip by drip, your freedom leads away. Wake up,
Wake up.
America, wake up. We need a liberation day. A hurricane is building. A revolution's on the way. Wake up, America, wake up. We need a liberation day. A hurricane is building. A revolution's on the way. Wake up, America, wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. And do it quickly. Yeah, I must be falling asleep or something. I don't know why I thought that this is America. Sorry about that. Wake Up America. It's also from Wake Up England is the original song, and the album This Being Human comes out. I wrote it down February 20th on International Social Justice Day. And in the meantime, you can go to the Cides website at thecides.com. And that's CIDEES. So CIDES. So thecides.com. And please, please, please go and check their music videos. Listen to their streams. And it's fantastic stuff. And of course, you can always hear on citizens.am. Paul, I want to thank you so much for coming down from the mountain to join the show again. And I admire you, brother. So no, I'm just a fan, and I'm a huge admirer of your work.
Oh, beautiful. Sean and Mackenzie, thank you so much for hosting me. And Mackenzie, thank you so much for squeezing in this latest version of Wake Up America. You know, I just love the spontaneity of the band when I said, hey, we're going to do this with Sean and Mackenzie. Why don't we change the chorus and say Wake Up America? Beautiful. You know,
love it.
But we as a band and our message, our ethos, we have so much resonance with you guys. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. Gratitude.
Thank you so much. Great. And this has been Coup Save America, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Love you guys.
Love you too.